There comes a time in every man's life where he must face his demons. In the Warhammer world, you either conquer them or they will consume you, quite literally. So in the fetid wastelands outside the Rotfather's domain, Nurgle is going to teach us how to rush, or at least try to anyway, because they aren't always about boxing up and blobbing, and a sizable portion of their roster is surprisingly agile, despite the memes. Can they break convention against the boys in blue and the warrior women of the Ice Court? Let's find out. Kislev, Nurgle, let's get it poppin', like a pimple on a great unclean one's ass. So yeah, the Plague Father can rush, quite well in fact. We'll be faced with a whole host of ranged troops on the Kislevite side, and just as it's true for Tzeentch, Forsaken are at the top of the meta for Nurgle as well. They allow you to go wide and fast, and quickly buzzsaw your way through the fodder spears, swords, and even armored Kossars you typically see from Cathay and Kislev. They are somewhat fragile, but their poison mitigates that somewhat in melee, and they do so many things that Plague Bearers simply cannot. So if you're trying to shut down range play quickly, you want them as your front line. I mean, 40 charge bonus, 63 weapon strength, those are pretty ridiculous stats combined with poison and 42 speed when you're talking about an infantry unit, and they have no problem chopping their way through armored Kossars either, which is typically the front line you're going to see for Kislev. Behind them are two beasts of Nurgle, the lovable pets of the Earthfather's favorite swamps, and they provide the mass, tankiness, and AP you want against some of the more heavily armored targets. In this case, as a soft counter to enemy cavalry. Mix them in with the front line, and if Hussars charge in, you can smack them around with your tig old biddies. And that slime trail of poop and pus they leave behind is a nice little debuff in and of itself. Supporting both the beasts of Nurgle is a cultist. Seems to be included in just about every army for Khorne and Nurgle at least, because Gate of Chaos is just an incredible ability. It's like a zombie summon, but the demons that appear can actually kill stuff. And in the rear is the Plague Toad squad with Pox Riders at the helm. And they're an important component of any Nurgle rush because they mix well with Forsaken and quickly breaking through the front, then compromising the ranged troops in the rear. Pox Riders are a super cool unit, I like them a lot. Maybe not the best performers in the roster, but they have their place. And then we have the Herald of Nurgle on a Rotfly, which is by far the most cost-efficient and safest lord choice, able to quickly shift flanks, support where needed, and charge into dual characters. Very hard to kill with Locus of Fecundity and Fleshy Abundance, with Stream of Corruption to chunk down HP off infantry. My opponent today is Xiphos, a very good player, who happens to be creating an awesome match combat mod with all new animations that he hopes to carry over to Warhammer 3. Link to that will be in the description below. Super cheap on the Ice Witch, just Frostblades and the Breath Spell with Guardian's Call for the Snow Leopard summon, on foot to make her harder to goon. Bunch of Kossars, armored Kossars, and Streltsy with 2 Ice Guard, wielding dual swords. Able to slaughter demons from range and carve through infantry and melee with their magic attacks, but still quite squishy and reliant on combined arms with good support to keep them alive, which the Gryphon Legion can provide protecting the rear. Also a Little Grom Cannon, great character sniper and chunker of high value units from long range, surprisingly accurate as well, and we'll see that in action as the battle gets underway. Like that scene in The Patriot where the cannonball bounces and takes a dude's head off, max range shot, sniping out, and one less Demon Toad combo to worry about. So Nurgle won't be waddling into battle this game. It's balls to the wall, close the gap quickly, and attempt to overwhelm Kislev before they can respond. Ice Maiden's Kiss, imbuing Frostbite, slowing down Forsaken on the advance, but unable to penetrate their 85 armor, and look how quickly the front lines have already engaged. Not even a minute into the battle, and all 5 Forsaken are ripping and tearing in close quarters. So you can see they're tying down everything they can, and a few of them are actually bypassing the front line, trying to get into the rear and cause more carnage that way. Streltsy are a unit you definitely want to tie down because they can take down Beasts of Nurgle or even the Herald of Nurgle on his Rotfly quite quickly if they're allowed to fire in. And both Cathay and Kislev can struggle a bit in those frontline engagements if they've got 5 Forsaken bearing down on them, and then they're joined by Plague Bears from Gate of Chaos. That's what's so huge about the Cultists, because Plague Bears never get to pick and choose their fights unless they've got a mobile carrier delivering them into the back line. This is a mistake though, unintentional of course. Xiphos knows his lord isn't super important and also won't die that fast, so he's tying up the Forsaken to give his guns more time to shoot and calling in the Snow Leopard as well, while the Beast and Cultist continue their push into the middle. I'm not going to catch it right away, but ideally want to be ignoring the lord completely and continue that march forward no matter what. As for the Cultist, Sometimes you want to wait to summon in the demons, sometimes it's best just to drop them in quickly, but that's a lot of high DPS infantry to deal with if you're Kislev, and the ferocity of this opening attack will put them on the back foot at the start. That summon is so important. Ideally, they would have gone onto the Streltsy in the rear and completely tied them up, and Streltsy would have a difficult time getting away from them once they get poisoned. But either way, they're pushing past the armored Kossars now, and the Beast of Nurgle has mass and speed to push through. And alongside the Furies that just came in from the flank, they've got a good engagement on the Streltsy, but nicely timed from Frostblades on the Gryphon Legion, slamming into the rear, and that will just completely melt the Furies. I mean, they had no chance whatsoever, disappeared under that charge. Nice stream of corruption on the Kossars, and the Ice Guard so far have not been touched. Beasts of Nurgle busting through the front line, and they're going to be great support here, debuffing all infantry they get near, and supported by the Pox Riders and the rest of the infantry. It's just way too much for the initial ranks of the Kislevite infantry. Question is, can the Ice Guard and the Gryphon Legion put in some serious work here to get them back on the right foot? That Forsaken and Plague Toad combo has already shredded everybody in the front ranks. Streltsy will survive because the Gryphon Legion are supporting them quite well, but the Forsaken are into the Ice Guard now, and that's not really a fight that Ice Guard want to take. They will win, but they'll take a lot of damage in the meantime. Like I said, they're a little bit squishy, so you'd like to soften up those Forsaken a little bit more before any melee engagement like that happens, and the only way that softening will occur is with a rear charge from the Gryphon Legion, which they will get. It's Xiphos, he's good at this, but that is a nasty friendly fire shot from Little Grom. Not ideal at all, trying to take out the Beast of Nurgle and instead killing 19 Ice Guard models while the infantry fights to the death. They do have 9 bonus versus infantry, but that hammer and anvil from the Gryphon Legion will turn it easily in the favor of Kislev and free up that entire flank, which is super important because without it, without the Cav and Ice Guard out there, Xiphos has absolutely no hope of winning this game. But so far, the Gryphon Legion have been fantastic backline sweepers, microed very well. Fecundity going down on Nurgle's left flank to support those Forsaken as more streams of corruption tally up with the Beast of Nurgle to just wreck those poor Streltsy. Beast is tied down, but they can't chunk through it super quickly, not with the Pox Riders and the rest of the infantry charging past and into the Ice Guard. Little Grom has gotten some nasty shots, but it's been obstructed for a decent amount of the battle so far. Fleshy Abundance on everything. AoE heal that is always incredibly scrumptious, and now my Herald of Nurgle is dry humping that Little Grom into submission. Love that bug, one of my favorites. Quite literally, it is a bug. Charging into the Streltsy now, while the Gryphon Legion get 58 melee attack with that Frostblades mechanic from the Ice Witch. Some toads in the background crumbling out. Cultist is still safe. Beast of Nurgle is safe as well. Happily munching on some infantry in the rear and about to get some help from the Plague Toads and Pox Riders that were just freed up. And they have two choices. They could push forward into the Ice Guard, and looking back on it, that's probably what they should have done. But my thinking here was I wanted to link up with the rest of my army and deal with some of the Cav and infantry. And if you get too isolated, too spread out with Nurgle here, I still think that Kislev has the mobility advantage with those Gryphon Legion. If they get clean charges into the Pox Riders or Plague Toads, they're going to win those fights. So I felt like a more cohesive formation at the moment would be better. The problem with that is that it frees up the Little Grom to no longer be obstructed and get some nasty volleys into the Cav that has so far been quite problematic for Kislev. Beast of Nurgle and the Herald on his Rotfly charging into the rear and making sure those Streltsy do not fire at the high-value single entities. Lord Choice is not really known for his high DPS, but Stream of Corruption is a nice tool for taking out some ranged troops, or at least getting them moving, getting them isolated, and maybe getting out of position so that your more mobile elements can punish them. And that's actually what's happening here. They're charging forward. Rotfly is in danger at the moment. Gryphon Legion hot on that Herald's heels, and it's setting up some nice shots from the Little Grom as well, which will now be used as a character sniper to try to kill the Lord, which is a really good idea because the Fecundity heals and the Fleshy Abundance are definitely the biggest issue Kislev has to worry about now. Getting some nice volley fire coming in, and the Ice Guard have returned to the fight while the little Grom shoots in, and they're getting some magical volleys in as well. So things are maybe shifting back towards Kislev's side. They're losing some of their cav, but a lot of their ranged troops are still online and spread out, and Nurgle at the moment does not have enough troops to shut them all down and silence them completely. And the Herald is getting sniped hardcore by the armored Kossars and that massive cannon. So the unbreakable passive that's kicking in for Kislev now is keeping them in this fight. A lot of other factions would have already crumbled and started running at this point, but the balance bar shifted back to about an even state at the moment, and in fact, the Fleshy Abundance was forced out on the Herald. That's exactly what you want. You can't always kill their Herald or Great Unclean One, but if you can force out those early heals and prevent them from getting the overcast ones, which are much more cost efficient and heal a much bigger portion of the army, you're going to be in a lot better spot. Pox Riders are still a huge issue for the bald boys of this Slavic kingdom, though. And though these demons are bonus versus infantry, at this point they have more than enough HP to deal with what remains of the Gryphon Legion, who are on their last legs and about to rout. In fact, they just did. Ice Guard getting some good shots on the Forsaken from point blank range, and the rest of the Forsaken, the remnants, who have just been torn to shreds, charging in. And this is the kind of melee fight that Ice Guard are happy to take with their 9 bonus versus infantry. When they've got the lead and they don't have to deal with a relatively healthy group of Forsaken, they'll be able to slice through them quite quickly, and those Forsaken should rout pretty soon thereafter. Pox Riders are free, though. They've been amazing this game, gotten a ton of kills, good value across the board. Ice Guard with their dual swords, chopping up. This is where I really wish we had the blood pack, because there'd be all kinds of decapitations. It'd be very satisfying to watch. But yeah, those Forsaken absolutely shredded. Here come the Pox Riders, though. And now those Ice Guard have nothing in between them and a complete overrun from those disgusting mounted demonic cavalry. Beasts of Nurgle, both still happily trundling along, smashing their way through whatever gets in their face. Herald might be in the wrong spot. I like how Herald just sounds like you're calling, like his name is Herald. He is tying down the Kossars, which isn't the worst idea in the world, but that's again exposing him to the little Grom, which is being attacked in melee by the cultists, but apparently not enough to silence it permanently. And the Plague Toads, the Pox Riders, finishing off the rest of these routing troops, and then they've got their most important role yet. Charge downhill, straight into the Ice Guard, and overwhelm them with noxious, disgusting freaks from the warp. Frog Cavalry! You love to see it, man. And the bonus versus infantry on these bad boys and the poison will pretty much make it so these Ice Guard can't do anything. I mean, they probably won't get a single kill in melee against what remains of these Pox Riders, who were just healed up by Fecundity too. So they've gotten all kinds of heals thrown their way. They had a Overcast Fleshy Abundance, they had the Fecundity, they had, I think, a Locus of Fecundity from the Lord as well. And the Beasts of Nurgle were also great at just dueling the Lord, getting rid of some Streltsy, and being everywhere they needed to be. And it was basically just a numbers game. Swarm the field, tie down all the ranged troops that you can, buzzsaw your way through the front ranks, let the Toads clean up what remains, and it was a relatively efficient rush build here. Now, not a particularly try-hard army from Kislev. There were no Ice Chariots, there were no Barriots, and I think if you're expecting this kind of Forsaken rush, you would want to invest maybe 2, 3, hell, even 4 if you want to get real cheesy into the war sleds. But it's fun to experiment, and it's not fun to always rely on the exact same troop choices and fall back on the exact same types of army compositions. Warhammer has a ton of variety. It's fun to try out new stuff, and here, the Forsaken Rush worked out real well, and the Toads in the back were also quite nice. I mean, 1,000 damage value on the Pox Riders. Plague Toads weren't so great. They had some problems, but the Beasts of Nurgle helped out tremendously, and that Herald of Nurgle, Herald, on his Rotfly, always a great lord choice, supported by that cultist. The Kislev army, I really like the inclusion of the Ice Guard. They were great here. Both of them, over 1,000 damage value. One of them got 1,800. Lil Grom was quite nice. It's always amazing for sniping out characters and enemy cavalry. Gryphon Legion were microed very well, and all of his elites got good value back. Yeah, 1,900 and 1,250 The armored Kossars and the Kossars were what struggled here, and obviously you're not expecting massive value from them, but dealing with 5 Forsaken when you're not expecting it, when you're not expecting such a ferocious rush, and then another summon comes in on top of that to tie down your Streltsy and everything, it's tough to deal with. And I think Kislev in this scenario would have had to have played, I wouldn't say perfectly, but Zyphos played it pretty well and still struggled with it. So if you're having trouble in this matchup as Kislev, you could always just bring more bears. Bear Cavalry would have shreked the Pox Riders and the Beasts of Nurgle, and Barriots are, I mean, they're just super good right now. GG. Hope you guys enjoyed.